You know, my friends, before Matthew was a follower of Jesus and the author and evangelist of today's gospel, he was of the Jewish faith. And so it's important for us to remember that Matthew wrote his gospel for Jewish Christians. And with today's gospel passage about Jesus and the Canaanite woman, Matthew is telling us that faith in Jesus Christ and faith alone is what breaks down the barrier between Jew and Gentile. Matthew reinforces the belief that this new faith was not uniquely the property of the Jewish people. It was to be shared with all of God's people without any exclusions. And in our own day and age, we too are confronted with the same fundamental truth. Faith breaks down the barrier between all peoples and ourselves. And so being a Christian means being a person who has no barriers between himself or herself and others. You know, I'm sure that most of us have heard about doctors without borders. Well, my friends, we're called to be Christians without borders. Universal salvation means that we all belong to the very same God. So we must love in a universal way, in a Catholic way, small c Catholic, meaning all-inclusive way of seeing the peoples of the world. In our first reading from the prophet Isaiah, we heard the words, "My house shall be called a house of prayer for all peoples." Therefore, it is all people who are called to worship the same God when we are called to be in fellowship with all peoples. So it's not acceptable that those who worship the same God should practice any form of prejudice, intolerance, injustice, bigotry, or racism toward one another. Yes, not acceptable, but sadly and unfortunately, it happens over and over and over again. So, my friends, we're called to say no to any kind of exclusion of others, no matter their religion, their ethnic origin, the color of their skin, or where they live. You know, we erect barriers between others and ourselves for many reasons. But it seems that the most common cause for putting up barriers is fear. We fear that another group is somehow going to somehow take something away from us. And then our fear leads to sticking a label on them as strange or different or dangerous or some other kind of insulting label. Of course, when we label another group, we then dehumanize them. And in doing so, we justify not having to treat them with the very same dignity and respect every human being is entitled to. As Christians, the only label we should be putting on others is that they too are beloved sons and daughters of the same God. You know, my friends, serious prejudice and bigotry is always waiting to raise its ugly head. But as Christians, our responsibility is to deeply examine our own attitudes, to make certain that we are not in any way a part of those who are oppressing others, even if only in our minds. You know, the vision that Jesus gives us is one of universal love. We do not belong to just one small family or one small group, not even to just one nation. We belong to God's universe. And this belonging calls for an unlimited openness to all of God's children. Our first reaction should not be, what do we have to fear from this other group of people? But rather, what can we learn from this other group? And what do we have to offer to them? In no way is that an easy task, my friends, because this will only come about through open, honest, heartfelt prayer. May Jesus grant each of us the powerful and amazing grace to accept this truth of our Catholic faith, that we are all beloved daughters and sons of the very same God. And with the psalmist today, let us pray. May the peoples praise you, O God. May all the peoples praise you.